Lest I forget, back to the judiciary once again. What do you make of the Supreme Court judgment that concerning the emergency rule in Rivers State, that the president has the powers to remove governors at will? Do you foresee any danger with that pronouncement or judgment?
No, but I told you that we have a Supreme Court that is an annex, an extension of the powers of the executive, shamelessly. In a democracy, you're giving to a democratically elected president the power to destroy and dislodge a sub-regional authority democratically elected by the people in the name of emergency. Who gives you that power? Where did you get it from? What constitution? That interpretation was absolutely illogical for me. Don't forget that the same Supreme Court had ruled before and went ahead to even instruct our former president, Olusegun Obasanjo, to pay the monies to Lagos State at some point. You don't have the power to undermine democracy. If you got to power through democratical means, you cannot dislodge democracy. I don't understand where the Supreme Court got that, but I think that, because the interesting thing about the judiciary is the fact that the Supreme Court can overrule itself. And so I think that the Supreme Court, in no distant future, will look at that judgment again, revisit that judgment again, and say to Nigerians, we were wrong. Because you don't have the right to remove an elected governor. Because you were, in fact, elected yourself. What the Supreme Court did was tell us that they are okay with despotism, authoritarian rule, and dictatorship bearing its fangs. But I know that the Supreme Court, maybe after the tenure of the present Chief Justice of the Federation, may humbly decide to revisit that judgment sooner rather than later.
Let's look at what's happening in Rivers State. Are you comfortable with the way the FCT minister has carried on in Tinubu's administration, especially with his role in the crisis in Rivers State? Even now, we have an impeachment hanging on the head of the governor. After the emergency rule, we are back to the trenches again.
Rivers of shame, rivers of the absurd. And, I'm a practicing mystic, so I know what karma is. When Wike manipulated the elections in Obiapo and most of Rivers in 2023, he thought it was going to be Uhuru. It was going to be an easy ride. He has imposed a governor who will do his bidding, and then he has also gotten the Rivers results to favor Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So for him, it was a win-win. He was totally oblivious of a strong arm of the universe. And so he's paying the price for his larceny. For Fubara, very unfortunately, he dined with the devil, and so he's having a bath of rashes. But I want to say clearly that what we have in Rivers is shame. But very unfortunately, because it favors the political inclination of our president, you don't forget he said that to him, you can snatch it, you can steal it, you can grab it, you can run away with it. So what happened in Rivers wasn't a problem for him. And that's why they're all having the headache. Now, tragically, it was that same Rivers scenario that led the Supreme Court to the shameless approval of dictatorial tendencies in its judgment when it came out to say, albeit shamelessly, that the president can sack an elected governor, all in the name of an emergency rule. But let me say clearly that this whole theater of shame is absolutely troubling for me, because indeed the greatest threat to the democracy that we fought for, the greatest threat to the sustenance of democracy, is this presidency. The Bola Ahmed Tinubu presidency is the greatest singular threat to the survival of democracy. And I tell you for 3 reasons. When the rule of law becomes a victim in governance, then people, like you hear them in the streets, people are beginning to applaud Traoré in Burkina Faso. People are beginning to say that what is happening in Niger is salutary and enviable. People are saying that what is happening in Mali is salutary and laudable, because they are tired of tendencies that otherwise should have been democratic, but are fascist, but are absolutely undemocratic and despotic. And so I think that what we must do is to say to Mr. President, call your minister of the FCT to order and allow some decorum in Rivers State. The time has come for us to say to Mr. President, tell the judiciary that they must assert their independence if we must continue to call what we have a democracy. And tell your rubber-stamped National Assembly to rise up, even if in some kind of pretense, to show that not everything that comes from the Aso Rock Villa gets passed by the National Assembly. And I'm saying this, Victor, because it is important that we understand that if we continue like this, Nigerians will have no reason to say, defend democracy. Because those who chiefly should defend democracy are the ones threatening it. And then, on the second note, the fact that the schoolboy defines democracy as the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. But unfortunately, this democracy is for the rich, by Tinubu and his praise singers, for those who stand on the mandate. And so, if the definition of democracy has been changed to those who are around Mr. President and those who favor him, then this government is absolutely endangering democracy. And then the third angle, which bothers me, is if all you hear are statistics about how government is doing this, and how government is doing that, and how government is doing that, and when subjected to the crucible of truth, you find out that most of these things are either half-truths or outright falsehood, then the perfidy and mendacity that occupies the public space is another danger to the sustenance of democracy, because democracy must thrive in an atmosphere of confidence and trust. And so, all that we have seen, elevating falsehood to a craft of state, subjugating and stifling dissent, coercing people to move from their parties to the ruling party, procuring court jesters to sing your praise when you know that you aren't doing well, and then subjecting the judiciary and indeed the National Assembly to the whims and caprices of the executive. These are fundamental threats to democracy. And I say again that the greatest threat to our democracy is this presidency.
All right, let's look at the events in Rivers State with the former governor. Do you think he's acting independently, or do you think he's taking instructions from somewhere?
The former governor, Wike, is an agent of a president. Rivers is a theater of politics. Don't forget that Rivers is arguably the second richest state in the country if you're following what we call allocations from the federal government. After Delta, Rivers comes second in terms of federal allocation. So Rivers is strategic in terms of resources, in terms of voting population. So I think that Rivers is a victim of the nuances and the needs of a few individuals. Rivers State is a victim of a politics of 2027. And the only way our dear president can acquit himself of the accusations is to helm in his agent, Wike. The only way he can assure Nigerians that he truly cares about the state and survival of democracy is to call him to order and allow Fubara function as the governor of Rivers State. So if and except that is done, those who are trying to tell us that, oh, the Rivers State is an independent state, the State House of Assembly is doing their job, only living a lie. They're only hiding behind one finger. I think that clearly we know that Nyesom Wike is an agent of the president. He's working in cahoots with the president, and it's about the resources of the state and about the voting population of Rivers State.
Lastly, this is the third attempt at impeachment on Fubara. Do you think the State Assembly will have enough grounds to prove their misconduct this time around?
I'm just worried for Rivers. I hope it doesn't degenerate to violence, because, you don't push a people for too long. They tried that twice before, and then they got emergency rule. Now, it's still about a few individuals and about the nuances of a few individuals. I think that the ambition of Nyesom Wike and Mr. President must not be allowed to remember the Wild Wild West. Remember Operation Wetia. And it bothers me that so soon we have refused to learn from history. I hope that Rivers State doesn't become that inferno, that furnace that burns democracy to tatters. And I hope that Mr. President understands that either by being slow, either by being undecisive, he's fanning that conflict that may finally destroy our democracy. And so I pray it doesn't happen. I pray he comes to terms with the reality and the urgency of now. I pray that the fulminating cataclysms of trouble that his quietness is allowing in Rivers does not eventually turn into that furnace or inferno that will engulf democracy. I just pray.